So it's time to play fact or fiction. I've got 6 things that are either true or false about being in the United States Army. Play along, let's see if you can figure out what is true and what is not true. What's up, my friends? U.S. Army veteran Christopher Chaos. Today I've got 6 things, just because it was cool to grab these 6 things that I wanted to kind of give you an example of this legend, this thing that may sound like it's crazy, but really it's true, or it sounds crazy and it is crazy because it's not true. So we'll play a little game and you'll try to figure out if you think that this is something that is true or something that is false, and then I'll elaborate on that so that way you get a good understanding as to why this myth maybe is a thing or why this thing that sounds crazy is really true. Now, if you want to stay up to date with this type of content, because that's what I like to do, is I like to create Army-related content, sometimes even military-related content, make sure that you are subscribed to this channel. Click on that bell to get alerts as soon as new videos go live, to include the live streams, and become part of that awesome notification platoon. So let's dive into these 6 things that are either true or false. Starting off with, a female soldier could get in trouble if she gets pregnant in the United States Army. That is false, at least mostly false. I mean, there are certain circumstances where a female could get in trouble if she got pregnant, but for the most part, completely allowed. That's why they specifically have maternity uniforms. There is actually a specific uniform for when females get pregnant in the Army, so that way they can still wear the Army uniform and not be like restricted with like a really tight uniform because it doesn't fit very well when you're pregnant. So they have a specific uniform for females that are pregnant. Sometimes when it could get that female soldier in trouble is in a combat zone. That's pretty much the main kind of time frame as to when it would be not allowed, is in a combat zone, as nobody's allowed to have any kind of sexual encounters while in that combat zone. So if a female, became pregnant while in that kind of environment, then yeah, she probably could get in trouble for that. The combat zone is usually the main restriction. There might be some training events that, restrict that, maybe certain field problems and everything. But for the most part, as long as, the female is, not, having, sexual encounters with someone that's married and she's single, or, cheating on her spouse with that person or something along those lines, then yeah, you can get in trouble for that. But for the most part, as long as it's totally legit, whether she's married or not married, that's fine. Females can have children. Next up, a soldier is not allowed to use an umbrella while in uniform. This is true, mostly. There is a really small occasion when you can use an umbrella in uniform, but for the most part, soldiers are not allowed to use an umbrella while in uniform. So if you are in the motor pool, you're going to formation, you can't just go and bring out an umbrella to keep yourself dry. Soldiers actually issued wet weather gear, so they have like jackets that they can wear to kind of keep the uniform dry, and it has a hood that you can probably sometimes in certain circumstances put the hood up in that case and keep dry in that kind of manner, but you can't use an umbrella. There is a small window of opportunity for a soldier to use an umbrella, and that is when they're in their dress uniform. They can wear an umbrella in that kind of time frame as long as they're not in formation. So, but with that, it's pretty strict. You can't have some kind of crazy, umbrella that's got like some kind of, crazy pattern on it or logos on it. It basically has to be an all black umbrella that they use, but only when they're in the dress uniform. To be honest, soldiers aren't really in dress uniforms all that often to where it's really that big of a deal. I mean, you do it for certain ceremonies, maybe for promotion boards, on active duty, maybe certain other events, occasionally you do like the payday activities thing, but that's not as big of a thing as it used to be like in the early 2000s. But there's not a whole lot of instances that soldiers really wear the dress uniform, so usually it's not really necessary. A lot of people just don't do it. That's the only time a soldier really can get away with using an umbrella, is in the dress uniform. Anything else, you're in physical fitness uniform, you're in the camouflage uniform, can't use an umbrella. The next one is soldiers can get punished if they get a sunburn because it's damaging government property. This one is true-ish. I'll kind of elaborate on that. So yes, technically, if a soldier got like a really bad sunburn that would prevent them from being able to do physical exercises, from being able to do their job, maybe, making it to where they can't wear the uniform properly or something like that, then yeah, a unit could go and seek punishment, give them Article 15, which is the punishment in the Army, or, some other kind of corrective action type of thing to punish that soldier for not taking care of themselves and not being able to perform their duties due to the lack of taking care of themselves. I mean, this goes beyond just sunburns. I mean, if a soldier was doing something carelessly, got themselves injured, and they can't perform their duties because of their careless actions, then yeah, a soldier can get in trouble for doing that. Now the part where I say true-ish, and that is mainly because it's not really a thing that usually happens. I have known soldiers that have gotten sunburned and they didn't get in trouble for it because usually they just suck it up and they just continue doing their job, continue doing everything, maybe partly because they're afraid of getting in trouble if they complain about it, but also just because a lot of times you're soldiers and you just suck it up anyways. I don't think I've ever seen a soldier where they were so sunburnt that they, couldn't do their duties and they got in trouble for that kind of a thing. Most of the people that I knew, they got sunburnt and they just kind of dealt with it. They just kind of pushed through it for a few days until it got better and just kind of dealt with it that way. But technically, if it did interfere with you doing your job, then the leadership could seek punishment. I just don't think it's actually a thing that's ever happened or commonly happens. Maybe if you had a soldier that was doing it all the time, they're always going to the beach, to the lake or whatever, and getting sunburned all the time and it was affecting them at work, then yeah, maybe then. But if it was like a once thing here and there, they probably wouldn't care. They're probably gonna tell them, hey, suck it up, otherwise you're gonna get in trouble for it. But most soldiers are gonna suck it up anyways. The next one is that there's a high divorce rate being in the United States Army. So this one is, I guess we'll say true, but not to the extent that you really have to worry about it true. So yes, when you look at the numbers, the Army's divorce rate compared to the civilian divorce rate is higher, but not by much. It's like a very, very small difference. That's probably not something you really need to worry about being like, oh, I'm married, but I'm going to the Army. Is that gonna screw up my relationship? I mean, that really just depends on your relationship anyways. I mean, if you don't have a strong enough relationship that if you're gone for a month, for a year, for a few weeks or whatever, that your relationship could suffer, then yeah, I mean, that could possibly affect it. But if you have a really strong relationship, then it's probably not gonna make any big of a difference. But the percentage is not like an extreme, like kind of crazy percentage. You're not looking at it like, oh, the divorce rate is here for civilians, but for Army, it's like way up here. So it's practically a guaranteed thing that if you're, married and you go into the Army, that you're gonna end up getting divorced. It happens, sure, but percentage-wise, it happens just as often on the civilian side, only slightly higher on the military side, probably because of deployments and everything like that, but not at a rate that you need to really worry about it and be like, oh man, I'm really scared about my relationship and if I should join the Army while I'm married or even get married while I'm in the Army. Probably the reason for the slightly higherness one in the first place is a lot of soldiers just rush into marriage because they want that BAH, they want that BAS, they want to get out of the barracks, whatever, and they rush into marriage, where on the civilian side, maybe people aren't quite, necessarily wanting to rush into marriage because there's not the same incentives, when you're in the military compared to being in the civilian world. So you end up with these relationships that are rushed that probably should not have been rushed or should not have even gone as far as getting married in the first place, and then they end up getting divorced because it wasn't a relationship that was really worthy of you actually going the distance to getting married to that individual in the first place. So I think that's just my opinion as to why probably it is slightly higher in the Army, is because of rushed relationships of people wanting that BAH money, wanting that BAS, wanting to get out of the barracks or whatever. Next up is if you say permission to speak freely to an NCO, to an officer, you can speak your mind and they're not gonna punish you for that. You've probably seen this in the movies, but no, that's not true. You simply saying permission to speak freely to an officer or to an NCO and then saying that your leadership sucks or that I hate you or that you're garbage or whatever, or some kind of other insult or something else that you want to speak freely about, does not give you a free pass. I don't think anybody ever says permission to speak freely. I think the only time I've ever seen that is in like movies, TV shows, something like that. I don't think I've ever seen that in real life or even ever heard of someone saying that. I think everybody kind of just understands in the military that no, that's not a free pass for me to complain and get out of things. There are kind of ways that you can sort of do that. Usually a lot of commanders or first sergeants have what is called an open door policy. And if you really want to kind of express something that you're really upset about or whatever, then sometimes you can go to them with those kind of things, but you still have to be respectful when it comes to speaking to that individual. By saying permission to speak freely isn't just your free opportunity to be able to curse someone out and insult them or whatever. No, it's not gonna work that way. You're still gonna get in trouble for doing so. Last one is that you can get out of a jail sentence by joining the Army. For example, the old saying of go to war or go to jail. Regardless of what some old school veterans might say in the comments section, this is false. This is not a thing that you can do. I had this myth in a previous video a couple years ago, and I had a few people in the comments saying, oh no, my uncle did that. Oh no, I know someone who did this, blah, 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 whatever. They had all sorts of situations, but let's think about this here for a minute. Do you really think that the United States Army is gonna be like, you know what? this guy murdered someone, this guy did drugs, this guy did that, and you know what? Rather than him going to jail or her going to jail, why don't you come on over? Come on over into the Army while you get out of that jail sentence. That's the kind of things we exactly want in the United States Army. So come on over, yeah, that'd be great. No, it's not a thing. I don't care what anybody says in the comment section. If there's some old school veteran that says, my Uncle Billy Bob, he was in that situation and he got out of, going to jail by joining the Army and went to Vietnam, blah, 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 blah. There is actually a recruiting regulation that says that you cannot go and bring someone into the Army in lieu of a jail sentence. That is not something that is authorized, not something that is allowed. Now, if a judge was like, all right, I won't sentence you to probation or 1 year in jail if you join the Army, that's not like a thing that necessarily is highly enforced, because that judge may not care about Army regulations and everything like that. If they decide to drop the charges and you don't join the Army, there's not a whole lot they can do about that. There could be a judge out there that threatens someone saying that if you join the Army, I'll drop the charges, and maybe they're just trying to get people to join the Army. I don't know, but technically, that is not a thing that they can go and make a deal with the Army, being like, hey, we're either gonna sentence this guy to X amount of years in jail unless he joins the Army, and the Army makes a deal being like, yeah, sure, that's cool. That is not a thing that happens, okay? The Army does not want people that are going to come into the Army and screw that crap up. I mean, sometimes you can get waivers for, criminal actions that happened in your past and still join the Army, but if it's in exchange for you serving time compared to joining the Army, not a thing. It's not a thing. I don't care what anybody wants to say. You can look it up. You can look up the official regulation. You may have judges trying to say that, maybe, if that was a thing, but it's not a thing. You cannot get out of going to jail by simply joining the Army. A few years back, I actually did a video about things you're not allowed to do in an Army uniform, and you might be surprised about some of the things you can't do while in an Army uniform. So if you have not seen that video, check it out right here. I also have my latest upload right there for you to check out that one. I got links down in the description box for social media links, for website, Discord, some recommended videos, all sorts of stuff. Kind of glance down there and check out what I got down there for you. Thanks for hanging out. I'm Christopher Chaos, and I'll see you next time. See ya.